that group as a whole simply has not been good enough. And that's why this weekend in Colorado, leaving there, was like, okay, this is over.
Into Northside Territory, Foul Territory Network's Cubs podcast. I'm Sahadev Sharma with my partner, Patrick Mooney. We're your Cubs beat writers over at The Athletic. And Patrick, Cubs fans can be happy for the Bears, who are the only team possible to be more disappointing for them, bring them more disappointment and angst. Thankfully, the Bears did that for all fans to ignore what was a terrible weekend in Colorado for the Cubs. They can complain about the offensive line instead.
Yep.
Losing 2-3 those first two games in Colorado, it was kind of, I think I went into the weekend saying no excuses, have to sweep, and they didn't get the job done. The first two pretty gut punch losses there to start the series. To salvage one isn't something to celebrate. After that weekend, you can pretty much say season over, unless they go on a nice little 14-game winning streak here or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, the Cubs have lost the nerds. I mean, waking up Sunday morning in Denver and going on to Fangraphs and seeing just 0%, even though they were not mathematically eliminated yet. I think they were boosted to 0.1% after that win. But yeah, look, I mean, almost any other time of year in any other context, a 3-3 road trip through Dodger Stadium and Coors Field is pretty good. It's what you would probably take. And this team needs sweeps. That those two back-to-back losses just could not happen against a last place team. And I know Coors Field is a different place to play. You know, a 2-run, 3-run lead is not really safe at any time. But for me, it was just kind of what this team has kind of been lacking all year, right? Of just like, can they come through in the highest leverage moments? You know, their bullpen has done a really good job for months, but it hasn't quite been good enough overall. The offense showed a lot of signs of life at Dodger Stadium and at Coors Field. You can point to some really nice individual improvements or in-season turnarounds, but like the entire body of work has not been good enough. Kyle Hendricks looked like the professor yesterday, had a very nice performance at Coors Field, but I mean, he was just standing at his locker and was just like, I'm honestly thankful they kept giving me opportunities. Like he knew, like he basically said, you know, every second of every day, I was thinking of like, you know, can I turn this around? What are we working on? Like he was very, you know, giving shout outs to the coaching staff for sticking with him. And, you know, we all love Kyle. Just a great dude to deal with, enormously impactful pitcher in franchise history, but like someone probably should have come and taken his job, right? In terms of what was coming up. And so it was just all of those things coming together. Council politely deferred all questions about kind of what does this mean? And the way I presented it to him was, and you know this, Sahadev, like there's a lot of really good dudes in that clubhouse, guys who really love baseball, which isn't always the case with people who are really, really good at baseball. Like I think the consistency, the habits, the routines, the just all of it, all of those dynamics, I think have been positives, and players who are very thoughtful explain that to us. And then they also acknowledge it hasn't been good enough. It's not up to their standards. It's not up to anyone's expectations. And Council said they're right. I would agree with that. And that's kind of where he left it, saying, I don't want to send the message that we're done when we're not done yet, but that's kind of what's coming next.
Yeah, I assume that happens at some point this weekend. I'm not sure, like, I don't have like their magic number, their elimination number off the top of my head. It just hasn't been, top of mind. So I'm not sure where that stands, but it's it's approaching. They're 5 games out and need to pass 2 teams, essentially pass them, not just tie them. So figuring that out, it could happen sometime this week during this homestand. You mentioned Kyle Hendricks. We could also see his final start at Wrigley Field in a Cubs uniform this homestand as well. When you talk about like, there's some positive signs, there's some good things. Absolutely. I think about the Porter Hodge blown save on Saturday, and I think about the randomness of baseball and how that check swing wasn't called strike 3, and then that leads to them losing.
Mm-hmm.
And all you want as a front office, as a team, as when you're building a team, you want those moments to not mean so much.
Exactly.
That shouldn't be how your season is, make or break. The randomness of baseball should not make or break your season, right? If that's what's happening, your team just isn't good enough, right? It could break your way and all the things could go well and you could win 92 games, right? And now, but those flaws are still there, and that's how you get this false sense of security. And the right move then is to be more aggressive and add to that team and say, like, I don't want to leave anything up to chance. We won 92 games. I don't want to leave anything up to chance. Let's add more. The right thing to do now is, like, we're not getting those bounces. We need to add more to find a sense of security, to clean up those, to make sure that margin of error is smaller and we don't have to rely on so much going our way, because one moment like that, fans are going to point to it because it's memorable, but there are moments that go your way too that you kind of overlook because it's like, oh, you got that win.
Yeah. So, I would say, like, Hodge was a name that you had heard and had mentioned for a while. So he was, like, certainly on the radar, but was not someone that the Cubs had kind of like spotlight, like, oh yeah, like this is our guy, which does make me wonder a little bit about their, I don't know, kind of self-evaluation of their own organization. But I mean, Hodge had like a 5 ERA at AA last year. He was a 13th round pick out of a high school in Utah in 2019. Amazing, like, success story this year, like what he has done from being basically an afterthought in spring training to being maybe their best reliever right now. Someone who's extremely trusted, but also, like, with your season on the line, like, should he be pitching in that 9th inning? Like, shouldn't there be someone else there as kind of a backstop to where maybe he's pitching in the 8th inning or the 7th inning, whatever it is? I just think that things like that show just how it hasn't been their year. They needed a ton of things to go right. A lot of things have, and we can get into that. Some of it is impossible to miss. Pete Crow Armstrong running around everywhere. If you look at a lot of their core players, they've had pretty good to great seasons, but it just has not sequentially lined up in a way that helped them avoid that 2-month stretch, or where they are really just hitting their stride here in September. And so, yeah, it's nice that they have good vibes in the clubhouse and that they care about their craft. And I mean that sincerely. Like, they do. I mean, you've talked to these guys for years, Sahadev, and Jameson Tyone, Dansby Swanson, Ian Happ, Nico Horner. You can go down the line. There's lots of guys in there who are really serious and thoughtful about their profession and want to win. But, like, that group as a whole simply has not been good enough. And that's why, I think this weekend in Colorado, leaving there, I was like, okay, this is over.
Congestion from sinuses, allergies, or a cold can be all-consuming.
That includes snoring for me. But Scotty, I found some relief from Navage Nasal Care. You've got to try this. Navage makes breathing easier. My Navage unit is a game changer for clearing my congestion fast.
Yeah, Kratz, Navage uses that smooth saline flow and nasal suction to clear those nasal passages.
It works for me, Scotty. I've noticed a huge difference since I started using Navage. I'm breathing better, and the whole family is pumped that I've got the snoring under control.
We want to help you get relief from your congestion too. Our listeners can order a convenient Navage starter pack, including a nose cleaner with batteries included and 30 original salt pods. Everything you need to get started. Plus, get a cleaning kit as a free gift with your order, but only going to our exclusive URL, navage.com/FAL, and using our promo code FAL. Again, to order your Navage free cleaning kit and for full product details, go to navage.com/FAL. That's promo code FAL at navage.com/FAL.
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, it's a good group of guys, hardworking group of guys. They expect more from themselves, and I think and fans want more. I think that's what you come away from. I think if you want to be optimistic about the future, right? If you choose to look more on the positive side, you can say May and June. Some of those issues have been corrected. Right. And we've touched on it, right? Like Porter Hodge has emerged. They've acquired Nate Pearson, the two guys that look like they could be part of the future, right? The bullpen is better from then. The question is, can you make sure it's better in April of 2025 and feel good about it and have some depth there when inevitable issues arise, right?
Yep.
That's one area. The two big things, in my opinion, that can't be overlooked that are very different from May and June are Dansby Swanson isn't cooked. Was something that I think you could look at and say, is this a 30-something-year-old player on the downswing and it's happening quickly? Or is this just a guy going through a really rough patch?
Yeah.
Maybe pushing through an injury that he shouldn't. I think it turns out it looks like it's the latter. He can still hit. Is he a superstar on offense? No, he's not. He is what they thought he is, and that's good. That's a good player, and they need him. They can't have him be that May-June guy, right? And then the biggest thing you touched on is PCA. I mean, the guy, like, you have to be excited about him if you're a Cubs fan. I don't know how you can watch him and not be excited. There are some things that happen that you're like, ooh, okay, I don't know how that happens or why that's happening, but the good outweighs the weird stuff that happens every once in a while by so much. And he's worth, I believe, 2.5 wins this season. And he was terrible. He was terrible for 2 months offensively. Like, just abysmal. And to get up to 2.5 wins, he's going to be pushing 3 wins. And that's kind of like what you talk about as his floor right now, the way he plays. It's really exciting to watch him. He and develop. I think there's a lot of things to remember when watching him. You got to give some credit to the coaching staff being patient and continuing to work with him and unlocking that, helping him unlock his best self at the highest level. He deserves 90% of the credit. Whenever I talk about this stuff, it's always the players that deserve majority of the credit, right? But coaches deserve something there. And also just like general patience with young guys. You may not see it right away, and it may look incredibly ugly, and it did, to the point where I was like, I don't know what is going on, and if this guy's going to swing at every slider that almost hits his toes, it's not going to work. It can never work that way. And it clicked really quickly, to the point where right before that Kansas City series, I remember talking to like other beat writers and being like, is this guy going to stop swinging at every slider that's thrown his way? Because if he doesn't, he won't develop. He's just going to be a defensive replacement center fielder. And it clicked, literally the day that I was probably having that conversation. And that's impressive. That's really impressive to see. And it's just a reminder for all of us that, like, okay, it can look really ugly, but they're 21, 22. Remember that. And I think Michael Busch is a huge win for this front office and the team in general.
Yeah, nice player.
In the sense that he's gone through, like, he has looked lost at times, and then he comes back and has really nice series or a really nice road trip. He looked pretty rough on the homestand, if I'm remembering correctly. Had a great road trip, So there's little victories that's not going to satisfy fans, right? They need wins in the win column and playoff appearances. And I think that the front office, if they know that. They know this is not like no more small victories, no more, hey, Matt Shaw's crushing the ball at AAA. Not good enough right now. Like none of that. Like that's great. Like it's really good. It's good that you have a deep farm system and that guys are knocking on the door at AAA. But you got to make the playoffs. And that's kind of where things sit right now, where 2024, it's like, okay, this wasn't supposed to be a developmental year, but you had some positive things. And now 2025, like there's a ton of pressure as we head into this offseason. There's a lot of pressure to get everything right because it's going to cost jobs if it doesn't go well.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of looking at this like David Ross's issues weren't like, oh, he didn't know how to collaborate with the coaching staff, or that he was a little more emotional, but he was very patient. I would say, his strengths were those kind of soft factors. And I think most people would have assumed. I had this conversation with someone kind of coming off the Dodgers stadium trip of like, did you think more of this stuff would have been cleaned up? Like Seiya getting thrown out at third base in the ninth inning of what I think at that point was a 2-run game against a pitcher who had like walked 3 guys or an inning of just I know the base running has gotten better over the course of the year, and there's an element of taking chances. There's always risk, but winning more one games, fewer blown saves, I mean this as a compliment. A lot of the things that Council's good at is what Ross was good at. And there is a lot of more accomplishment and experience and sort of there's a depth to Council, no doubt. Like I'm not trying to rip Council. It just seems like a lot of this is more continuity of kind of these moral victories or smaller developments, whatever you want to call it. And yeah, the Matt Shaws, like I think most fans and most media, or at least they should be, kind of like over this sort of shell game of like, outside of PCA, there hasn't been a whole lot of like homegrown and, Porter Hodge, but like on the position player side, or I don't know, there hasn't been that wow factor to me of like people coming and taking Kyle Hendricks' jobs, whether it's, or, Jordan Wicks like being healthy and just having a great season, or Cade Horton coming up and being this wild X factor. And so now it's like, oh, hey, look, Cam Smith got drafted recently and now he's in the AA playoffs. Like, it's just kind of like, all right, like let's, get back to us like when they're at Wrigley Field in a pennant race. And that's maybe my just kind of being over some of the hype around this Cubs system, like it's just kind of been years of this. And it's like, still haven't seen Owen Casey, and just kind of all of that together. I think you're absolutely right of just enormous amount of pressure on this front office to deliver this offseason. And I think that can go in a lot of different ways, but I would be shocked if they didn't report to Mesa next year with a new established starting pitcher in that rotation.
Yeah. I mean, I've been hammering that. I feel like basically since around the trade deadline, because people started talking about how just trade Jameson Taillon and go get another starter.
Yeah.
And my thought was like, all these guys are injured. All the young guys are injured, and you want to trade the one of the guys that's like locked into the rotation for the next few years.
Yeah.
And when you probably need someone else on top of him, like you don't just go replacing these guys. It doesn't work that way. And they need more established talent. Absolutely. I think it's great to have a good system. Like it's really important. The fact that the system dropped off so quickly during the winning seasons of 15, 16, 17 has led to a lot of the issues we're seeing now, right? But it can't paper over the the major league team, right? It's not like an excuse to like, well, we have this good system, so we can take our lumps at the big league level. You can get away with that for a year or two.
Yeah.
Probably not anymore, really, with the Cubs. You shouldn't be able to get away with that for a year or two. Now it's just like, yeah, great. Keep having, you need to have a good system. Absolutely. But
Yeah.
you need to win at the highest level. And that's, so I think it's important that you bring up Cam Smith. I think it's really important that they hit on these draft picks because they cannot be drafting in the top 10. They need to stop drafting in the top 15 for like it, they need to be, and they need to continue to hit on draft picks. And they need to find diamonds in the rough, because the excuses of like, well, we're not drafting in the top 10 won't fly, right? Like, well, we need to trade these core players to be able to get talent. Okay, maybe once in a while, right? Maybe once in a while you're trading someone that has 2 years left, and you're filling up your farm system. Like the Dodgers are able to do that every once in a while. Like good teams do that too. It's because you're trading from an area of depth and you're winning 90 plus games a year anyway. So it's like, let's move this guy, get some low A guys, and then in 3 years they'll be helping us and continue to win 90 games. That's the ideal scenario. They're not there yet, and I see a lot of people talking about, and we've talked about this so much, but like, is it time? Like, should Jed Hoyer be on the hot seat? Like, he is on the hot seat, but he's not going anywhere this winter. It's just, unless something weird happens and the Craig Council of front offices becomes available, I don't see that happening. Even then, I don't know. Like, I think it's really important to remember that Jed Hoyer is doing what Tom Ricketts wants as far as the budget goes. Like, he's working within his budget. He's not. He's doing what he kind of wants him to do. So we'll see where this goes. I think these last 2 weeks do matter in a sense, because like there are players that I think like pretty much all the guys that we mentioned, the young ones we want to see, and then isn't there someone coming? Oh no, there's no one. There's no more young guys really coming back outside of Wisniewski, right?
Wisniewski, I think, may have at least one more rehab appearance, but expectation is he will pitch again for the Cubs this season. Jorge Lopez is expected to be activated the day he's eligible. I believe that might be Wednesday. We should get a Justin Steele start here this week at Wrigley Field. I'd imagine maybe Wednesday, Thursday. I'll probably put that in pencil, but that's kind of what they had been looking at. I don't know, Cody Bellinger, what will his final numbers look like? I don't. Bob Nightingale, our buddy, he's the best. He may be right. I believe he wrote in his notes column that Bellinger fully expects to be back with the Cubs next year. That would not shock me, as banking $30 million as your annual salary in a place that's very comfortable, coming off like a good but not great year. For sure, that could make sense. But in talking to Bellinger and talking to Scott Boras last week in Dodger Stadium, it still sounded like something they were still going to dig in on, that it was not yet at that stage where it was obvious. And I think part of it is, how Wrigley Field has played this year. Is that kind of part of a narrative to sell to teams of, hey, look, like if this guy was in a different home park all year, it would look a lot better. And like, this would have been a really easy decision to opt out. Also looking at Bellinger, like if he was not on a team with PCA, he'd still probably be a center fielder for maybe like 2/3, 80% of the league right now. And he could still go back and do that for another team. So yeah, an insane 2 weeks to close the season. Maybe it makes that decision a little easier, but still feels kind of like a coin flip, and also something that I think the Cubs would kind of be fine with either way.
Yeah, I think it's a fascinating decision that we're going to have to dig into more, because for the reason you just said. Like, how does it impact their offseason and how they construct their team? I agree with you. I think they'd be fine with it either way. It's not something that's debilitating to them if he opts in, and it's not like if he opts out, free up some money. There's a way to replace that, or you go young there. You have all those positions that he can play filled in theory, right?
Yeah. I mean, a good player, he'll probably be like a 3-WAR player next year, $30 million. Like, probably opt out if he doesn't this fall. But yeah, it's a lot of money would come back to them as well. And then I do think they're going to be very open-minded this offseason. Obviously, we don't expect Juan Soto, but in terms of like grab a starter, kind of see what happens on the catching market, maybe build a little more certainty into the bullpen, get a true slugger to put into your lineup. Like, there's a lot of different ways. We've seen them make surprising trades.
Yeah.
Paredes being an example, the Michael Busch trade. Like, there's a lot of different ways they could go, and I think that'll probably be exciting to them at some point. But it does get harder to kind of sell that after like another maybe 83-ish win season,
Right. Yeah. No, I think you're right there. They're going to be very active, and there's probably going to be a trade or two that we can't fully like see right now, kind of like not exactly like the Michael Busch trade, but just something that it wasn't on our radar or isn't on our radar, and it's like, oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and that can help this team a ton.
Yeah.
I fully expect stuff like that this winter. Patrick, it's too bad that we have to start talking about the winter already. That's what this season has devolved to. They kept going up and down and teasing fans, making them think that there was a run coming. But this weekend in Colorado all but sealed their fate. We will continue covering it and hammering on the offseason and the big picture and seeing if this team can get back to the postseason in 2025. Thanks, everyone, for listening to Northside Territory. Make sure to rate, review, and subscribe. Subscribe on the YouTube channel, and make sure to subscribe to The Athletic, where Patrick and I will be covering this team. Thanks so much for listening, everyone. Take care.